I've had several people ask about the flight I did for Tom Scott and how I built the box, so I thought I'd put this video together. A few weeks ago, Tom emailed me with the idea of sending a garlic bread up on a weather balloon. I love the idea. I'd actually sent up a cake for the children's BBC a couple of years ago, and the problem was, although we'd sent the cake up, nobody ate it afterwards, which was a bit of a disappointment. So I like the idea of sending something up and eating it afterwards and seeing what it was like. So I jumped at the idea of working with Tom on this one. So Tom and I batted a few ideas about how this would work. One of the key points was we felt that the bread would need to be protected when it landed to keep it away from, as Tom put it, woodland creatures. So and also, it just gets incredibly muddy sometimes, and or gets caught up in a tree, and you could get bits of tree in it. So the idea was to protect the garlic bread as it came down. So we came up with the idea eventually of using a polystyrene box that would close around the bread, and I set that to go off at around about 1,000 meters because that's typically above the cloud layer that you get, so we wouldn't have to go through the moisture that you might accumulate in a slow descent. So we put the garlic bread into a box and held it down with cable ties. The main reason for that is that because it gets pretty rough when the balloon bursts and the parachute opens, you really need something good and secure to hold items together. So we went for just using standard cable ties on that one. So the box is made using a simple fabric hinge, some very long springs, a couple of plastic pillars, and these allow the box to open fully and still be closed by the springs, and some magnets. The magnets are used to ensure that the box remains closed when it lands. There's a cord which is attached to the lid of the box, which holds the box open during the flight, and then as at the appropriate height, the string's released and the box closes. Initially, I thought of using a hot wire cutter to cut through the cord holding the box open, and that was the original plan. I did some experiments, and the hot wire cutters that I typically use would have worked fine. But for this flight, because I wanted to reuse some of the software that I'd already written for some other work, I chose to use a radio control plane servo. And all that happens is that the servo is operated when it's time to release the string and hence close the box. The servo is heated by a small resistor pack, and there's a temperature sensor on that. And so what I do is I heat the servo up and keep it at a sort of working temperature when it needs to open. And the reason for that is that it gets very cold during a high altitude balloon flight, and it can the grease and the gears can sort of bind together when they're very cold. So the heating just makes sure that the servo is free to release. So the software actually preheats the servo before the command to open the box. Now that might seem very complicated, but actually I've had a 100% success rate with that on previous flights, so I just felt that was probably the safest way to do this. The software uses GPS to work out how high the box is, and as it drops down below 1,000 meters, the command is sent to close or rather open the servo so that the string is released and the box closes. The flight really proved that the box was needed. The box landed in a very muddy field. I mean, it was muddy. And the next field over had some livestock in it, so had it landed somewhere else, it could have easily have been eaten by the sheep that were there. So it was a good job we had the box and it actually did its job. I'm thinking of doing another flight of a similar nature. I'm thinking of either flying some popcorn and actually making it in flight, or making some ice cream in flight, because both of those things are possible and actually use the environment. The popcorn, according to Cody's lab, anyway, will come up nice and fluffy as a result, extra fluffy as a result of being made in a vacuum. And the ice cream, obviously, you can use the cold of near space to freeze the ice cream. It's going to present a little bit of a challenge because you need to mix in some air, and the air is getting pretty thin by the time it's at its coldest. So what I'd like you to do is to, in the comments below, make some votes for either popcorn or ice cream as the next flight. So if you're interested in these projects and want to see some more videos, just hit the subscribe button.